Hello, Grar. I want to welcome everybody to our next edition of Grar's 3 on 3 at 3 o'clock. My name is Scott Weste. I am the broker owner of Green Square Properties. Each month we get together down here at Grar with the Education Committee and put on a panel with 3 great panelists that we've got here to discuss topics that are relevant in our industry right now. I think we often refer to it as an honest conversation about relative issues. This month's topic is no exception. We're going to be discussing pricing strategy with 3 agents who excel at listing properties and have for a long time. I'm going to let each one of them introduce themselves. Please tell us your name, the company you work with, and how many years you've been in the industry. Start with Darrin.
Well, hello everyone. I'm Darrin Elliott. I'm with Greenridge Realty, and I've been with Greenridge since the beginning, so almost 20 years now. And I home base out of the Ionia County area, but I'm pretty much everywhere. And I appreciate everybody having me here today.
I am Kindell Rerucha. I am the lead listing specialist with the Lucas Howard Group, Keller Williams. I have been licensed in Michigan for 8 years, and I work the greater Grand Rapids area.
And my name is Geoff Brown, and I'm the broker owner of City to Shore Gateway Group, located in Allendale, Michigan. I'm in my 8th year in real estate, all with City to Shore.
Great, thank you guys. As a new agent, I remember going to my first couple listing appointments, and I was incredibly intimidated by pricing out those listings. I kind of felt like I wish there was just a button I could hit, and it just told me the right price, and that was it. And we all had the exact right price. In reality, I don't think that's the case. We want to hear a little bit about your process and how you get to that pricing strategy when you go to a listing appointment. Why don't we start with Geoff?
Oh, wow, pricing strategy. So before I go to a listing appointment, I do as much research on the property as I can, right? I go to BSNA, I pull the information. I try to do some AVMs through RPR. I look at past listings, past sales of that house on the MLS, and then I will do kind of a statistical CMA so that I know what I'm looking at before I get to the house. Of course, everything changes when you walk in, and I let my sellers know that this is statistical. I haven't seen your home, but it's kind of a ballpark, and we can adjust up and down from there. It's kind of my first steps.
So you are using some AVMs. That was
I do, yeah. I don't use Zillow. I just think it's a nightmare. I do use RPR, and it depends on the property. Sometimes RPR seems to be dead on. Sometimes it's radically off because there's not enough information. But I think they're a good place to start.
Sure. How about you, Kindell?
I agree completely with what Geoff said. That's
Okay.
pretty much the same process. However, I pay close attention to our past sales because that tells us what the market has done. Yeah. And then I'm paying very close attention to those active and pendings because that tells us where the market is going. Also, when I'm looking at my pricing strategy that I'm going to review with my clients, I make sure that I take into account those search engine parameters. Most of them operate in $25,000 increments. So again, if you have a home and you're listing it at $329,000, you've missed all those potential buyers that are going to have a $325,000 cutoff. So when I'm looking at that pricing, I don't undervalue homes, but there are sometimes some things you can do to get it to have maximum exposure to more buyers.
Sure. Love it. Darrin?
And I do some of the same things that Geoff does there as far as gather some preliminary information, the county information, previous sale, see what I can put together before I go meet with the clients, so that way I'm armed as best as I can. And then, everything can change once you walk through that front door. But if it's in an area that's my stomping ground, I can usually, shoot from the hip, adjust, and a lot of times sellers will put you on the spot. And I'm trying to make it very clear that I'd like to go home tonight and run a traditional market analysis, and just kind of put my thoughts together. And can I follow up with you tomorrow with my final thoughts on market value range, and what we should do next with your property? And usually they're pretty good about that, but they're going to put you on the spot. And so you got to be prepared for that. And because of that, even though I agree that Zillow is just, it can be right on, it can be way out to lunch, it's important to just, in my opinion, look at it, because I'm like, my clients are looking at it, and I want to see what Zillow's telling them. If they got a $200,000 house and Zillow's saying it's $400,000, I got to be prepared for that. So unfortunately, I do grab that Zestimate and see what is there. But then I always do my thing, and then I might go to RPR just to see if RPR matches what I'm thinking. But what I found is RPR and Zillow are a lot of times tied together.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how I started.
I want to jump in and say there too, all three of us said BSNA. I cannot tell you how many homes that I have walked into, and I've pulled the report from GRAR from when it sold the previous time, and then you go pull township, and none of it is accurate.
Right.
It is so important that you double check the township records and not just rely on those past listings.
Yeah, and the township records are often way off too. I'll pull
They're farther
BSNA, walk into this, 3-bed, 2-bath house and find out it's a 5-bedroom, 2-bath house that, and they're legal bedrooms, right? They'd made changes that have never been reflected in the township information. So that significantly changes. One point I did want to make is it is really important. I think you said it too. Do a real quick search of active listings before you go out there, so that you know who the competition is as well. If you're the only house listed, boy, you have a little more leeway to play with there, right? You can flex a little bit more with your numbers to, coincide with what your sellers expect. But if there's 33-bedroom, 2-bath homes for sale right now, it's white noise, and you have to be able to prepare them for that.
Interesting. I want you two to also talk about something Darren brought up. He said he likes to tell his sellers, I'd love to go back, circle back, look at my numbers, and then call you tomorrow. Do you guys do that? I know for me, I love the opportunity to do that. I know if Kindell is following me into the listing appointment, 15 minutes after mine's done, I might not get that opportunity. But if I'm the only agent interviewing for that I know of at the time, I often try to prep my sellers. Hey, I'm going to look at your house and I'll get back to you tomorrow before I even go out there. So that expectation's been set. Do you guys do that at all?
My goal is to have that listing signed while I'm there. So I try not to have to do that. There are those rare instances, again, where the home is completely different than what you anticipated. And we even have a questionnaire that they fill out before I come that's going to tell me about, any changes, any extra bedrooms. Yeah. I should have all that data beforehand. Okay. But you do still encounter those scenarios where it's completely different. And in that case, I will say, I want to be confident in what I'm telling you, so I need to look at these numbers again. Is it okay if we call tomorrow?
Sure. What do you, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm the same way. In a perfect world, I'd love to do what Darren does. I'd love to be able to say, you know what, I'll call you tomorrow, or let's go stop and have coffee tomorrow, and I'll bring the contracts. And there was a time when we could do that a little bit more. But when things get competitive, I'm a little more old school, where I know my chances of landing that listing decrease significantly if I walk out of there without a signature. So part of that is knowing what we're doing, right? Knowing our craft. And being confident in what we say, so that if we're sitting there and we know we're off, but we know the value add of a bedroom or a value add of a bathroom is this or that, and we can make those changes, and I can get them to say yes verbally, then I can put them in a contract right then. That's what I prefer to do.
And there are so many agents out there right now, and a lot of the sellers are savvy. And of course, I always say, yes, interview multiple agents. You should be choosing the best person to do this job for you. It's a big decision. But I was on one 6 weeks ago. They interviewed 8 agents.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of competition. Of course, I got it and I closed it. But it's 8 agents. So I think you have to be as prepared and as knowledgeable as you can possibly be before you walk in their door.
Yeah, that's true.
The last few years, we have seen a tremendous amount of appreciation in homes. Values have skyrocketed. What are you doing differently now in the last few years that you were doing when you started your career and maybe a house sat on the market for 6 months or 3 months? What does this market force you to change with your setup? How about you, Kindell?
I haven't changed a lot so far. We were all talking earlier. It seems like we really started to feel that huge shift in May. Some homes are still going to get multiple offers, some aren't. Some will still sell in the first weekend, some won't. So I'm still structuring it based on trying to create that multiple offer situation. And I'm also preparing my clients that this may not happen, that we are seeing 7 days, sometimes even 14 days on the market now. Even the best home isn't always selling the first weekend out.
Yeah, I fully agree. The shift we really felt in May, and I think it really comes down to the home value price, right? Because anything under 250 is still going, because there's and still we're able to still generate multiple offers, which we should try to do for our clients, because I think that's the right thing to do, fiduciary responsibility, get them as much as we can. But we have to be a little more careful when we're looking at the $400,000, $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 homes in tempering their expectations of the seller that this is going to have 5 offers and we're going to take 50 grand over offering or over asking price. That's just probably not going to happen right in this market. But like we were talking with agents that have been experienced, we've seen this before. It was before everything went crazy. We're just getting kind of back to that normal that it used to be like, and trying to have some of our newer agents not panic in the fact that the house sits there for more than 7 days.
Sure.
And-
What do you
and-
think, Darren?
Well, in my travels, I really haven't seen a settle down yet. I know the last week or two,
Yeah.
we've talked about it. I've had people bring it up, but I think it's too early to tell if that's happening right now. And I'm still, to answer your question, still doing everything like normal for the most part, but just preparing my clients that it is still a fast-paced market, and it is a strong seller's market, but you can still overshoot. And so you got to be careful with putting these offer deadlines in place. Before we got up here, I was telling the panel that I still lean towards a traditional listing, at least to start. Put it up, see what kind of activity you get. A seller can always choose to regroup and put that deadline in place, but at least that way we have complete control. The seller, can do what they want right out of the gate, and it prevents us from looking silly. I go, you don't want to look silly. You got an offer deadline, people see the deadline, you get to the deadline, the house is still on the market, what's going on? And now you might get some buyers thinking, well, what's wrong with that listing that it didn't fly off the shelf? They expected multiple offers and they didn't get it. And so that's kind of how I started out. As far as other parts of the question, the market's strong enough that, open houses are a thing of the past. You're not doing any of that unless it's a tool to get people through the house. But I prepare my sellers right now that when we put a price on it, if we don't have activity and offers within that first week or even three days, that we need to regroup, we need to adjust, just so we don't look stagnant. I get buyers that see a house that's been on the market 20 days and they're already asking me, what's wrong with that house?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, probably nothing. They probably just priced it a little steep and we should go look at it. So that's some of my thoughts on that.
Yeah, great points.
And 6 months ago, you could tell your sellers neat and clean, light and bright. That's what you need to sell a house. They didn't have to go through and make all the repairs or touch up all the paint. Or now we're getting to that point where I'm going, yeah, you should probably have the carpets cleaned, and you should go through and do this, and this before we hit the market.
Interesting. Are you seeing that as well?
Yeah.
Work on the seller's end?
Exactly. Yeah, we're getting back to, like I said, back to the old normal, kind of, where our job is a little bit harder. As realtors, it's not easy. I've seen it, like Darren said, where in May actually I had a listing where we put an offer deadline on it. But I didn't want to put the offer deadline on it, but the seller wanted me to put an offer deadline on it because that's what all their friends told them they should do. That's kind of what we have to play with a little bit, right? We're doing what our clients want us to do, but yeah, you got to be a little careful with that right now. And I like the traditional better. Like, no, and then we can shift into a deadline if we start to see a lot of activity.
Is there a price point out there that you guys feel like it just needs a deadline? There's going to be so much activity or a certain area where, you know, hey, if I don't do a deadline, it's going to be a circus? Or do you think that's come and gone as well?
There was 6 months ago.
Yeah.
I don't think we're seeing that right now. But it's the market is so strange. Houses that you wouldn't expect. You know, I had a one on the market at $650 last month, 7 offers.
Yeah.
You know, in the first weekend, that wasn't the price point where I was expecting to see 7 offers come roll in that first weekend. It's just very hard to predict what our market is doing right now on a week-to-week basis.
So you're just using that data, making sure you're priced accurately.
Yes, and as Darren talked about with his, if I feel maybe they're pushing the envelope a little bit on their price, or you know we needed to do some bigger repairs that they weren't agreeing to, I explain up front. The market will tell us, you know, if we don't get 6 showings, then we need to go back and reassess. If we don't have an offer after 6 showings, we need to go back and reassess. So I'm setting that stage up front and explaining we are in a different market. It has shifted. It has softened. This is not, you know, what happened with your friend 6 months ago.
I'm hearing some consistent themes from
Yeah.
you guys, which kind of tie into our next question really well. How do you guys navigate setting expectations with those sellers when you sit down at that listing appointment, sign that contract, particularly the ones whose vision of where that price should be is quite a bit different than yours? You know, sellers have been inundated with social media telling them the market's on fire, you're going to get, you know, 50 offers, you know, $50,000 over ask. What are you guys doing now that we're starting to see things balance out a little bit to set those expectations properly with sellers? Because I think we're all in need of some advice on that. We start with Darren this time.
Good.
Well, I started touching on it with the last question as far as when I sit down with them, sign a listing contract at whatever price. Hey guys, if we don't have enough activity to get us to the next step, you know, over this first week, we want to make that adjustment. We don't want to go stagnant and just prepare them for that. I just listed a house in Carson City, and Mr. and Mrs. were disagreeing on where they should put it. Me and Mrs. were on the same page. Mr. was not. We went with Mr., which was higher, and we're going to see how it plays out. We're a day on the market. We have 1 showing scheduled for today, so we're going to just kind of play it out. But Mr. at least is prepped. If we don't get to that next step, the offer stage, I think he's already ready to make those adjustments. And so I just put it out there right in the beginning when we price it.
What about you, Kindell?
I'm actually taking the form with me for a price adjustment now.
Oh, wow.
Every single time I'm on an appointment, because frequently with what they've heard, they are expecting a much higher price than what the home is actually going to sell for. So we have that agreement up front, and if this is where they want to go in, great, let's put it there, let's see how it does. But again, if we don't get 6 showings, or we get 6 showings and no offer within like the first 10 days, this is what we're going to take it down to. Because you also have to explain 30 days on the market is still the kiss of death.
Yeah.
Unless you're, you know, above
Yeah.
750,000. And at that point, you're going to get way less than you would have if you'd done that price improvement ahead of time.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with you. I like the idea of bringing in the price adjustment and saying, listen, if I go with what you say, because you clearly know more than me as the realtor, then you have to agree to adjust that price right now if it hits a certain level of inactivity, so to speak. I don't know. I just tell my clients, I said, listen, there's 4 factors that you need to know that will affect the sale of your house. One is the property itself, right? What's your condition? The other is the promotion. That's up to me, right? How I promote your home. The biggest one is price. And price will affect everything. If you're priced too high, you're going to have crickets. Nobody's going to come. If you're priced too low, people are going to think something's really wrong with it, right? And the fourth is marketing. Again, I can control that. So let's agree on the price. I want them to know that I'm the pro. This is what we do. And you can't always win. That's why we bring that sheet with us that says, okay, I'm going to let you win on this one, but you're going to make that change. That's a great idea to do that.
Are you getting any pushback from sellers when you bring that, or it's smooth sailing so far?
Occasionally you do, but at the very beginning of my conversation with them, I'm explaining that this is a partnership.
Yeah.
And we have to work as partners if we're going to maximize what you're going to get off your home. And also explain that they're not just interviewing me, I'm interviewing them. And if I don't feel that we can work together well as partners, then I may choose not to take their listing. That's also one where it quite surprises them. You're like, what do you mean you wouldn't pick working with us? What? And it changes their mindset a little bit. I think it does make them a little more receptive to listening to what you're talking about as a professional.
Creates more of a relationship versus changes the power dynamic a little bit.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah, I do the exact same thing. I always make it very clear to the seller that we're on the same team and that we want the same things. And I appreciate that you want to price it here. Heck, I want to price it way up there too. You know, if I can sell your $200,000 house for $500,000, absolutely, let's do it.
Yeah.
I
But
get a lot of calls from sellers to do that.
I win, you guys win, everybody's happy. But we gotta be realistic and we gotta pay attention to, you know, the market and then just go down that road.
And part of that too is talking about the appraisal, because you may occasionally get that cash buyer, but again, the home has to appraise. I had an appointment, I was on there a couple weeks ago in the city of Grand Rapids. Gorgeous. I mean, they remodeled everything in that home, top to bottom. They spent over $150,000 inside of it. The highest sale out of that neighborhood is $194,000.
Wow.
They need $450,000
Wow.
to get out. So again, explaining, yes, I would love to make that happen for you. But again, if the bank is going to lend the money, I don't see how the appraiser is going to pull $450,000 for this house. It's just not possible. So sometimes you have to help them understand that as well. And if we're not in the market now where we're getting $20,000 in appraisal gap coverage with every offer, then it's not a realistic situation.
Yeah, and if you've sat through any appraisal seminars and things like that, which I'm sure we all have, listening to the appraisers, right? I mean, Blaine specifically said, when the appraiser comes in afterwards, they want to be able to bracket it, right? They want to find one higher and one lower that have the same criteria, same beds, baths, close square footage. If they can do that, it's going to appraise. We have to explain to our sellers that, listen, you will be the highest price in this entire market, which means they're not going to be able to bracket it, which means we have to be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this is absolutely the greatest house in the neighborhood. That's not always the case. And I know that you love it. Remember, it's emotional with them.
Yes.
I know that you love it, but this is what I do. This is my job. This is what I do as a business. I do no more, but I'll do what you want to because you're hiring me, right? And then we're going to change it if it's too high.
When the education committee sat down to come up with these questions, one of the hot topics that were sitting in that room were they felt like a lot of agents were pricing properties well below market value in efforts to generate 100 showings. And they felt that was a really frustrating thing for buyers out there in a market where buyers are getting beat up every day. Do you believe in that strategy? Are you utilizing that anymore? Do you feel like that's a strategy that we're going to see disappear soon?
I'll go first. First, not anymore. Secondly, I was to a little degree, meaning if we had if I comped a house out at 325, I might go at 314. I would never go very, very far below.
Not 299.
Within reasonable, right? Just a little bit, because again, it goes back to the sorts people are doing, how they're seeing the properties. So I would just go under enough to capture more, kind of a thing. But we really didn't have to do much to generate multiple offers. And honestly, I said, and I know that a lot of my realtors have heard me say this a ton, you still have to have self-respect, right? Meaning the other agents in Grar and everywhere else have to look and go, that is insane. Why is he pricing it like that? You don't want that, right? You want them to know that you're competent and you're not just doing something ridiculous to generate 100 offers. When somebody goes, I had 37 offers, like, that's your fault. What I want is 3 or 4 good offers, 1 or 2 with an escalation, and I'm plenty happy.
Only takes one to sell it.
That's exactly right.
And
Yep.
yeah, and as I said, a lot of what I'm looking at are search engine parameters. I do not think you should way undervalue a home. Again, you comp it at 206. You listed at 199. You're looking at those
That's okay.
price cutoffs. You comp it at 514. You put it at 499. You're hitting those cutoffs. But I would never price one 25, 30,000 under.
But I did see it happen.
It has happened.
We saw it happen, and I went, just what I didn't want people to say about that agent's nuts, right? They're either they're nuts or they don't know what they're doing.
Or they just don't know how to value a home.
Or they don't know how to pay. Right, yeah.
Well, I do the same thing. I come up with my market value range. I never try to put an actual price. I go, hey, this is your market value range based
Smart.
on comps, based on conditions. And in this market, what you hear is true. There's low inventory. It's a seller's market.
Yeah.
So we should price towards the middle upper of that range. Now, granted, a lot of sellers want to try to go above and beyond that. But my suggestion is hit that sweet spot. And hopefully it does generate, multiple offers, at least multiple activity. But all we need is one good buyer. And I have that conversation consistently with all my sellers.
Yeah.
We don't have to get that crazy, situation where, people are fighting over it. We just need that one. Mm-hmm. And if you price it there, we should be okay. Now, granted, I sometimes jest and say it really doesn't matter because the market drives itself. So you got a $200,000 house, you price it at $100,000, the market should bring it to $200,000.
Yeah.
But that's getting into the ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I agree. I see those and I'm like, what the heck are
I know.
they doing?
Come on.
Because you got a problem there too,
Yeah.
even though the market will take it up, but you're catering to an entirely wrong pool of buyers when you do that. And so you got to be careful. Actually, I got a real good recent example of that. Saranac, Michigan. Hopefully, maybe you guys know where that's at. Builder house. Good buddy of mine, builder house. He rehabbed an old house, put it on the market. I told him somewhere around 200 is your sweet spot. He's like, but he, knows the market. And he's like, can we try 220, Darrin? I'm like, sure, I'll put it at 220 for you. Put it at 220. Did have lots of showings. Could not get an offer. Week goes by, a little over a week. And he's like, Darrin, I need to sell this house because I got this project and this project. He's like, Darrin, I trust it. Just do what you want. Just do whatever you want with the listing. So I put it at 189.9. We had another influx of showings, multiple offers that sold for 215. And I got to thinking, hey. And he was like, wow, Darrin, you're a hero. But we were just a little bit overshooting at that 220. And we were catering to the wrong pool of buyers. And buyers that were, even though I always encourage the offer, buyers that didn't really, at that price point, didn't see the value, especially if they feel in their mind that they're going to be competing with other buyers. So it was just the wrong situation. But when we slashed it 30,000, it went right back up.
Yeah.
So
Really interesting.
And
Yeah.
there are buyers right now who are, when there is an offer deadline,
Yeah.
are intentionally not offering, waiting to see if that deadline
Right.
passes. And then they want to put theirs in to try to be the only offer and not have to compete. That was unheard of 3 months ago, 6 months
Yeah,
ago.
exactly.
Forget it.
Yeah.
The mentality was, if I'm going to look at this house, I know I have to pay 30, 40, 50,000 over.
Yeah.
And that seems to be shifting a little bit. And so that, I feel like that's going to shift our pricing as well. You can't price it at a point where you're expecting to get 30,000 over anymore, depending on the location of the property.
No, but this may come out wrong. I don't think that the really good agents ever did that. Said I might have adjusted it slightly
Sure.
for those search engines, but if that house was worth an additional 30,000, my price would have been much closer
Yeah.
to that valuation. because you never want to do your sellers a disservice. It should be the right price based on the ranges, as close to that fair market value as you can get and still get the traffic that you need.
But it has been a crapshoot, right? I mean, the last 18 months especially. You think you priced it right, you think you've listed it correctly, it goes 50 grand over, and then somehow makes appraisal. And you go, what is going on? Then you price one right, it goes for value, and then it comes in 15 grand under appraisal. And you're going, this is crazy. So I know there's going to be a lot of agents out there, especially that are newer, and you're getting frustrated. Don't be, because even those of us who've been around a little bit, we get frustrated too, because it's like trying to hit a moving target oftentimes. So doing the best you can when you price it, the thing, and mitigating the expectation of your client, so they know that this is a fluid situation. It's not a cut in stone.
I think that's a great lead-in for our closing. You have one last piece of advice for a new agent out there going to their first listing appointment, trying to price a home?
Besides refer them to me?
Yeah. Besides that.
You go.
I really think if you're new or you have less than a year in the market, that you should find a mentor. And you should have someone who will help you, help guide you, and help you understand how to effectively run those comps. And I do those with agents out of the KW office all the time. I teach the listing classes and say, here's my card. If you need help, call me. As an industry, we want to be known as professionals and that we are the experts at what we do. And it just takes experience to become that expert. And there are lots of us out there, I think, who are willing to help. So that's mine. Ask for help.
Amen. Darren?
I would say for new agents, don't be scared. Don't get intimidated. I agree. They should ask for help. Find maybe somebody just to go on some of their first listing appointments with them. Another agent from their office, their broker, and you don't lose. You actually maybe gain some rapport with those clients you're meeting by doing that as a new agent, and you can really learn a lot from that. And then, now granted, you guys like to get the listing contract signed right at the time. So with what I do, I just run it. I bet you it's at least 70-80% of my listings are a two-step process. And maybe that's just how I do business or what I run into. But and if it's not that, then maybe it's important to have somebody right there. But then you can go back if it's a two-step listing and actually go over with your broker or an experienced agent in your office, the details of the property, the type of sellers you're dealing with, and get a good batch of intel and information to go back and impress them with and get the listing.
Great. Geoff, closing thoughts?
Yeah, just want to address Darren's. The two-step process is probably the best way to go. And look at Darren, look how successful he is. It demonstrates that right away. But that comes with rapport. And sometimes, you want to have rapport with your seller, but you don't always get to have that client that you've known 20 years and referred 3 people to you. So with those newer ones, that's what I'm talking about. I'm going with, a contract in my pocket that I'm going to try to get them to sign if I don't know who they are, kind of a thing. But going to the advice, I would advise you not to go alone your first time. Have somebody with you. Have somebody with some experience. But more than that, be prepared. The more prepared you are, the more confident you'll be, which means doing your homework. I try to explain it like this. That listing appointment is what we all seek to do. That's our business. We want to be in front of our clients. And you don't want to go in there unprepared and blow it because you're just throwing away opportunity. So be prepared so you can be confident. When you're confident in what the numbers are, you're confident in what you've been taught, then the conversation will go much, much smoother.
Love it. Thank you guys for tuning in today to our latest edition of Grar's 3 on 3. we look forward to next month's. I believe we're doing client retention, which I think is going to be a really exciting topic. And in closing, just thank these panelists for giving us their time. These guys are fantastic listing agents who sell a ton of houses. And so I think they brought a lot of knowledge to us. So thank you guys.
Thanks
Thank
for having
you.
us.